Let's go straight to Steve Gill now. He's a former advisor to both the Clinton and Bush Jr. administrations in the White House and joins us to talk about, well, all things American, and indeed Canadian. Very good morning to you, Steve.
Hey, Julia, good morning.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, I must ask you about that Canadian election. Shock victory for Mark Carney's Liberals. There's no doubt at all that in terms of simpatico, Donald Trump would have a lot more in common with Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party, who was absolutely, 20 points ahead when Donald Trump came into the office. Donald Trump then started talking about, taking Canada as the 51st state, impose these massive tariffs, basically gave the Liberals that narrow victory in the elections. That was a big mistake on his part, wasn't it?
Well, we'll see. First of all, the narrow victory is turning out to be, it looks like as the final numbers come in, a very narrow minority lead for the Liberals, which means they'll probably have to face an election in about a year. And we'll see how the tariffs and how the economy in Canada fares in another year. Keep in mind that the Conservatives spent their last few months attacking Donald Trump rather than embracing the fact that Canada was imposing very high tariffs, hurting their own consumers in order to keep U.S. goods and products and services out of Canada. So again, we've got about 90 to 100 countries that are in the process of negotiating these tariff deals. You're going to see the tariffs start coming down with reciprocity and fairness. And we'll see what that does not only to the U.S. economy, the Canadian economy, and to the world economy in the next 90 days, not this first 100 days.
Yeah, I know we've got that pause. I think we're still on the 10% as the basic anyway, still in play. But I have to say, again, I've come back to it a million times on the tariff issue. When Donald Trump said he had three separate aims, he was going to basically onshore all this manufacturing back again because it was going to be too expensive to import stuff, so people would onshore. He was going to make loads and billions in dollars raked in from all these tariffs, and he was going to have free trade deals with all these countries. All three of these things are mutually exclusive. So but we're going to claim that any one of them is the success, even though he says he wants all three.
Well, the tariffs coming down is going to get U.S. products, particularly agricultural products, into other countries that have been keeping us out. And you are seeing, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars of manufacturing being announced, expanded manufacturing in the U.S., companies coming back to the U.S. And we just saw that Apple is going to move their manufacturing from China to India to avoid the tariffs.
Yeah.
So,
how's that working out for American workers? So they're going to get they're not going to get a job whether it's in India or China, are they?
Well, the cell phones are going to be a lot cheaper, and more importantly, when you've got Ford, when you've got major manufacturing companies, auto manufacturing companies expanding here in the U.S., Hyundai and others, that's going to create jobs. And again, for our farmers, those who've been cut out of these foreign markets, whether it's ranchers, whether it's dairy, again, Canada was imposing about 250% tariffs on American dairy. They had a 25% tariff on American oranges and orange juice. Who are they trying to protect? Those Vancouver and Edmonton orange groves?
Yeah.
So some of their tariffs are ridiculous. They're going to come down. And again, we're going to see the response. Keep in mind that when these tariffs went into effect, the stock market dropped about 1,000 points. The media went into hysterics. The next day, it went up 1,200 points, and they didn't even mention it. The stock market in the U.S. is about 10% higher than it was a year ago. So again, the hysterics of the media need to take a pause and deal with reality.
Well, again, but not as high as it was when Trump came into office. Let's talk about Donald Trump then, because it's his 100th day in office, and my God, he got to work within, minutes of declaring the oath of office. Certainly his first day was not just a party day; it was just signing those executive orders. What do you think his biggest achievements have been in the first 100 days, but what do you think also his biggest failures have been?
Well, first of all, he's the first president in history to probably develop writer's cramp from all of those executive orders from day one. I worked through a transition between Herbert Walker Bush and Bill Clinton, and the first 100 days is a ridiculous time to make an assessment. You have most of his cabinet officials just went into business, the last 30 days. Most of the sub-cabinet top officials are still not being moved through the process because the Senate and the House in the U.S. keep taking time off rather than doing their jobs. So there's been a delay, as there always is, with getting people in. And yet Donald Trump definitely hit the ground running. And I think the biggest wins at this point, I would say, would be to secure the border. We had millions of illegals coming across the border. Now we have the border agents who are bored because there's nobody coming across. We're seeing the most violent criminals deported, despite the efforts of some who are harboring them in our courtrooms, trying to block it. So I think the illegal immigration is also carrying people who are being cut off of welfare and food stamps and health care. They're self-deporting as well as those that are being deported. So I think that's the top win. Second, you're seeing American energy independence restored. We've seen gas prices drop from the high. We're seeing oil prices at about $62 a barrel, a dramatic change, and that's going to impact manufacturing costs. It's going to impact the global economy in a positive way. I'd put those two at the top. And then the third most important thing, he's living in the heads of the left-wing media and the Democrats. They're in complete flummox.
That's not an achievement.
They don't know what to do. I count that as an achievement.
I mean, look, I love what he's done on the border, and I wish our country would get to grips. We've just had just 10,000, I mean, nothing compared to what you've had, millions every year, but 10,000 legal migrants arriving on channel boats in the first few months of this year. It's the highest it's been ever. I mean, and our country just goes, oh, have a free hotel. Let's just put you into the system, and we've got no chance of deporting most of these people. So I'd love it if we learned some lessons there. But still very concerned about where he is on Ukraine. That is my single biggest issue with what he's done so far. Vladimir Putin announced a 3-day ceasefire in Ukraine coming up for this weekend. They've rejected the proposed peace plan, as have Ukraine, effectively. Do you think that meeting, that one-on-one meeting with Zelensky at the Vatican ahead of the Pope's funeral, I mean, it's very staged, the two men in the chairs next to each other, on camera. But do you think that might have changed anything at all in terms of Donald Trump's approach to Ukraine?
I don't think so. And I think two things are the barrier to that. First, we're getting solid reports that there are those within Ukraine who are threatening Zelensky that if he cuts a deal, they will kill him. So I think for his own livelihood, he's blocked from being able to do any kind of negotiated result. And then one of my law partners and I just did a paper a few weeks ago detailing that under Ukrainian law, their constitution and their law, they have to have a referendum, a national referendum, before they could agree to transferring territory. And under martial law, which has just been extended, they can't have a presidential election. He's barred from negotiating with Russia, and they can't transfer property without a referendum. And those territories, including Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk, and others, would get to vote. So that's another barrier. They can't even transfer the territory. And I don't think that the Brits or that the U.S. negotiators are really aware of what Ukrainian law does that blocks him from really negotiating.
Well, I mean, he can, of course, there's no question at all. There would have to be a referendum. You can't just give away part of your territory. I don't think there's any question in which Ukraine would say, yeah, well, we will recognise, not just de facto, but de jure, that Russia owns Ukraine. That would be absurd. I don't think anyone sane, Donald Trump apparently, thinks that is going to happen. But in terms of, Donald Trump said he was going to bring peace on day one, full stop, end of. He hasn't. He's still trying to get it. He said he might walk away if he doesn't think that either side is serious about peace. Would that be a failure or a success for him then?
I think it would be an understanding that it wasn't our war to begin with. It was Joe Biden's war to begin this. It was NATO's war, proxy war to begin with, and that it wasn't really Donald Trump's. No, it was NATO that pushed it at a time when Zelensky had signed a deal to end it. He was forced to continue it as he is now.
That's not what happened. That's been completely and utterly debunked. It's genuinely been so completely debunked. It's just nonsense.
You're
far too clever and knowledgeable a man to claim that. You are, honestly.
By the way, Zelensky 6 times has agreed to sign a minerals deal and now saying he never intended to and never will. You can't trust a guy who lies 6 straight times, showed up at the White House.
He said he will sign a mineral deal in return for security guarantees, which are not forthcoming. Otherwise, there's no point signing a mineral deal.
They had the written deal that he had agreed to, and they signed a letter of intent a week ago with the Treasury Secretary.
Well, I mean, God forbid you'd have a leader who'd do something or not do something that he said he would do. I mean, goodness knows America would never have that, would they? Come on.
Well, don't do a deal with somebody you can't trust, and Zelensky can't be trusted.
But Donald Trump thinks he can trust Putin. That's my worry.
Well, I think he's looking at Putin's interest. You have to align with what are Putin's interests, and are his interests aligned with getting to peace? And I think his interests are aligned with getting peace. And Zelensky's are not.
His interests are aligned with Ukraine surrendering. That's different.
just the territories that are Russian-speaking and have been historically
They're
Russian,
not,
including Crimea.
I'm sorry.
For 10
The
years.
Donbass was not historically Russian, and the Crimea, for most of recorded history, has not been Russian. These are simply untrue statements. These are Kremlin talking points. These are internet Kremlin talking points. These are not actual facts.
I'll tell you what, Julia, I have been to Donetsk and Mariupol. Get your editors, give us a camera crew. Why don't you and I go there, show the pictures of where Mariupol is today versus where it was under Ukrainian control. We will show people what it looks like. Tell your bosses.
It's utterly irrelevant to the conversation. Steve Gill.
I'll meet you there. Show them
Disappoint me sometimes. Steve Gill, former advisor to both Clinton and the Bush senior administrations. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate you joining us. 10:45 is the time. Benjamin Butterworth listening to all of that. Come back in on, I'm guessing, Ukraine, one topic of most interest there.
Of course, but what alarms me is that these Trump advocates, these people in that Make America Great Again world, think the way that Steve did just then. I mean, it scares me because it's not bounded in fact, and the fact
it's really not. And he's a highly intelligent, knowledgeable man.
Precisely. That's why it's alarming. And are these the people that have the ear of Trump? Are these the people that are giving him advice? Because up until the last week or so, it looks like he was thinking along those lines. The way he talks about Crimea. I remember I interviewed the winner of Eurovision, who was from Ukraine, who had grown up in Crimea. She told me that her daughter is the 4th generation of their family to have to leave Crimea because of a war by Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Russian.
But also, Russian
want
speakers. Zelensky is a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. It's just mad to make this claim.
Look, I mean, by that logic, America must be British because they speak English.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, they'd be better off, wouldn't they? Make America Britain again. There we are.